We're going to start this meeting of the Jericho Select Board at 6:31 p.m. And as usual, we start with public to be heard, and I'm taking the option of being first tonight to talk about something that is not on the agenda, and that is the historic marker language. As the select board has taken note of the comments on the discussion on Front Porch Forum, as well as the receipt of many emails to the select board itself, it is clear that more thought and time needs to be taken to before the marker is actually discussed again. And so we will not, because of that, we will not be taking any comments in public to be heard about that issue either. So appreciate the public's participation, civil participation that we, recently had on Front Porch Forum about that. And so, but public to be heard is always the first on the agenda, and it is for anyone who has something that is not on the agenda. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak? Oh, SJ.
You get me in person just for 10 minutes because I'm on bedtime duty, but then I'll be on Zoom. Don't you worry.
Okay.
I am here tonight, SJ Doobie, in my role as chair of the Affordable Housing Committee. Our one meeting a month just happened on Tuesday. And in addition to the committee being unanimous that I bring this letter to your attention, they were also unanimous that I do it during public comment so that I can get it in the public record prior to town meeting.
Oh, good.
So I acknowledge that this is probably, this hopefully will come up on other future agendas. So I'll just read the letter to you so that it's in public record, and then I've got copies for you as well. The Jericho Affordable Housing Committee asks that the Select Board add a water and wastewater reserve fund to the Jericho budget, consistent with the priorities set in the 2023 Housing Resolution and the 2024 Town Plan. The JAHC proposes that this fund be established for the 2024-25 budget, if necessary, at town meeting on March 5th, 2024. The Jericho Town Plan, adopted December 2023, makes housing a priority and designates the village and village center districts as the primary growth areas. Concordantly, the number one strategy listed in the housing section of the town plan reads, quote, 1, invest in community infrastructure to facilitate the creation of compact, diverse, and accessible housing for people with a wide range of incomes in and around Jericho's village growth area, unquote. Thus, Jericho's housing plans are premised on adding infrastructure to the town centers to support housing in those districts. Further, the 2023 Jericho Housing Resolution commits the Select Board to, quote, lead a robust public process to review the village wastewater feasibility study to inform decision-making, and within 3 months of receiving the 90% report, establish well-defined next steps regarding municipal wastewater infrastructure for the village centers and/or the commercial district, and identify required municipal resources, staffing, and capacity, unquote. While the finalization of this report is not necessary to determine that funds will be needed to facilitate infrastructure, the 90% report will be delivered within the 2024-25 budget year. At the conclusion of that budget, the 2024-25 budget, we will be 30% through the 5-year term of the housing resolution and almost 20% through the 8-year term of the new town plan. We believe a water and wastewater reserve fund that is contributed to annually is critical to ensure progress toward our stated goals. The town of Jericho has effectively used reserve accounts for other long-term needs and to accumulate funds for coming projects. We do this to smooth the year-to-year impact for taxpayers and to ensure action is possible between budget votes. A reserve account also sends a signal of intent and commitment. We believe the Jericho Town Plan's priority and timeline for water and wastewater infrastructure warrant the same approach as is used for the more than 10 existing town-maintained reserve funds. For these reasons, the JAHC requests the creation of a water and wastewater reserve fund dedicated to much-needed water and wastewater infrastructure in Jericho.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So noted.
Thanks.
You on Zoom.
See you on Zoom. Is there, any other public to be heard, items that are not on the agenda? Do we have anybody on, Zoom? With their hands up for that or anything?
Nope.
Nope, okay.
No hands up.
No hands up, great. So next on the agenda is regular business, and we've already warned this once at the February 1st meeting, but we're going to do it again to meet any of the requirements for warning of a bond vote. And that's warn the second public informational hearing on FY 25 budget, capital budget, and overview of town meeting, including the bond vote information for February 26th, 2024 at 6 p.m.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yes,
Or
we
we,
do.
okay. So I will make a motion to. What does the motion say? Do I have to repeat everything you just said?
Just say as noted.
Yeah. So moved.
So moved, that's right.
All in favor?
No, second.
Second. You made the motion, he seconded.
No, I just.
No,
read it.
she read it.
Oh, okay.
I made the
Sorry.
motion.
I'll second it. There we go.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right.
Thank you.
What's the date on that again?
26th.
26.
26th, February 26th at 6 p.m. in this very room. And that's what would be required in the future if there was an Australian ballot, is something between not less than 5 days, not more than 10 days before town meeting.
You have a hand raised.
And it says Jim.
Yeah, hi, good evening. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I didn't see specifically on the agenda any discussion about the condition of Raceway Road and what the thinking is on it.
We need does he have a full name for the record?
Yeah,
Jim Bentledge, Bentlage. I live in the
Yeah.
foothills.
Thank you, Jim.
No, there's nothing on the agenda for Raceway, and it's updates at the moment.
Did you get that,
Okay.
Jim?
I heard, so, I just want to, advocate that, and I think a number of people, there's been a lot of traffic on Front Porch Forum about it. The road as it exists is, I don't want to come out, I can't think of another word, but it's unacceptable, right? I've lived there for 33 years. It just gets impassable many times, and it's in the winter and in the summer. I'm acutely aware of the concerns of paving it. I'm not advocating to pave it. I have my own ideas, but the way it exists right now, I just feel that we have to take that on as a topic and come up with a solution, whether it's just regrading it and improving the draining, but keeping it dirt. I've seen things like cut it off the through traffic. I know people's concern about speeding. I understand that, but just leaving it the way it is and doing nothing about the condition of that road, I just find to be very, frustrating, if that's the right word.
I feel your pain. I really do, because I live on Nashville, off of Nashville. And it's been a really, really tough winter for all the gravel roads. And that's happened the last couple of years because we've had multiple mud seasons and then freezing and thawing and stuff. And right now we have a young road crew and we're going, we just have to work our way through it.
But there has to be,
I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer at the moment, but
I know, but that road, there has to be a plan to fundamentally improve that road.
yeah, there exists, particularly if the sidewalk, I mean, that's part of what would be part of this sidewalk discussion is the quality of the road, of Raceway Road. And so that will be definitely looked at as part of this and how to maintain it better and deal with the because I'm sure it's base level.
Yeah,
problem.
it has to be taken down to the base, rebuilt, drainage put in. It just cannot stay the way it is and have the road crew throw load after load of dirt on it. That's just not working. And I can't imagine it's cost effective.
Well, thank you. I mean, we understand your comments. I mean, we will. There is a long list of roads and Raceway is one of them that needs to be looked at.
Thank you.
All right, oh, Stacy's, is Stacy in, still trying to do public to be heard?
Stacy, can you hear us?
Yes, hi there. My name is Stacy Jorshik.
Hi, Stacy.
And you have your hand up for a reason?
Stacy, do you have a question to ask, or is your hand raised accidentally?
No, I wanted to piggyback on the comment from Jim.
So noted, we thank you for your comments, because Raceway is, we understand is an issue.
Do I get to give my comment?
Sure.
So I appreciate you living on Nashville, and that's not said with sarcasm. But Raceway, as Jim has said, has changed drastically over the years, and it's become a pass-through road. So I think not only have we dealt with the fact that there's a lot of issues with grade and all of that, but it's also a highly utilized road for folks who want to circumvent 15 for whatever reasons. So I think it's really important to notate that.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move on to our presentation of the evening? I don't see any other hands, so
Nor do I.
so we're good. We're going to have an alternatives presentation for the Jericho Corners to Riverside Path. And I guess you are going to introduce everything, Linda?
Yes. Yep. Hi, Linda Blash, Town Planner. Whoops. Yeah, I just wanted to start out with background information about sort of like the history of this project and how we've gotten to the point where we are today with this conversation here tonight. Back in 2016, 2017, there was an initial scoping study done looking at creating a bike and pedestrian connection between Jericho Corners and Riverside. And in that study, it was looked at the north side of the road or the south side of Route 15. There wasn't very much investigation of the old railroad bed. It was just mentioned as something that existed. And the outcome of that initial scoping study was that the preferred alternative that was chosen was a combination of a 5-foot wide sidewalk and 10-foot wide shared use path on the south side of Route 15. So using the results of that scoping study, the town applied to the state for grant funds to implement that project in 2017, but that grant was not awarded. Subsequently, in 2019, the town once again applied to a state grant program to get funding to implement that project. It was also not awarded. And then so there were a couple of years where the project was mostly dormant, is my understanding, but the town was not to be deterred. And in 2022, funding was received to revive the project through this supplemental scoping study with some feedback from the state on the previous grant applications that the project impacts would need to be better understood. And there was a desire to investigate whether using the old railroad bed would be a feasible option. And so since last year, we've been undertaking the supplemental scoping study, and there have been several meetings. February 21st last year was the initial meeting. July 20th, we had a presentation from Stan Tech, and now we are here tonight to see the revised alternative options and the final report and recommendation from Stan Tech. So we've been working with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission on this project, and we have Christine Ford from the Regional Planning Commission. I think she's on the Zoom. And then our guest here tonight is Sean Neely from Stan Tech, and he's going to be doing a presentation on the alternatives.
Is that where we move on to Sean?
Yes, I'm handing it to you, Sean. Take it
Okay.
away.
Sounds
Thank you.
good. Oh, Sean, you're gonna share yourself.
Let me share my screen
Okay.
here. Okay. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody, Select Board, and everybody for joining in person and online. Yeah, look forward to sharing with you this evening some revisions and the recommended alternative. So tonight we will review some of the background information for the project, some of the existing conditions that many of you are pretty aware of, I'm sure. We will review the alternatives, including an additional alternative that has been developed since the last meeting. And we will seek Select Board endorsement for the recommended alternative. And then we'll also discuss next steps, what happens afterwards.
Before we go beyond, do you mind if I ask a question about number 3? Are you expecting that Select Board endorsement this evening, or is that just like a next step?
If the Select Board is up for providing that endorsement this evening, that would be great. But if that doesn't work for you and you want to get back to us, I accept that.
No, I just want to know
Sure.
what
Yeah.
my expectation is at the end of the presentation.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
And actually, in regards to that, I will have to recuse myself of that decision because of, again, I'm affected by the path and
Oh, that's
I've
right.
offered testimony on prior versions, so I'll have to recuse myself from that decision.
Thank you.
Yep.
So this is a graphic showing the general study area. Starting basically including the corridor of Vermont Route 15 from Griswold Street all the way up to Riverside, as well as the existing railway corridor north of 15, running from Silly Hill Road to Raceway Road, as well as Raceway Road itself. Those are the main components of the study area. So the study has included several tasks. We reviewed the previous scoping study. We updated it with new data, new analysis. We held a local concerns meeting just about a year ago. Recognized several folks from that meeting where we received helpful input. We also had received additional stakeholder input and did a site walk along the rail corridor, met with the trail committee from the town, as well as some of the adjacent landowners, and received some helpful information at that time. We evaluated the alternatives and prepared a draft report. And over the summer, there was a presentation and further feedback was provided and received. And since that time, the project team has worked together, revisited the alternatives, and developed a third hybrid alternative that we will get to. And we have a final report, and upon, well, I think I'm jumping ahead of myself here. But yeah, so that's where we're at. Those are the basic tasks that have been completed so far. From that local concerns meeting last year, we received a lot of helpful feedback. Some highlights are here, including concerns about the safety for cyclists and pedestrians traveling through the study area. Concerns about impacts to several private properties that would be impacted by different alternatives in different ways. There's concern about vehicle traffic along Route 15, particularly in the area posted at 50 miles per hour, and heavy truck traffic along 15 as well. And there were some privacy concerns expressed about having a path being in such close proximity to some of the residences along the route. And there was definitely input provided expressing concern for erosion, particularly north of Bittersweet Lane, where the river had a failing, and there's a big impact at that location, and and what that would mean for the cross-country alternative. So this is the general flow of how a project goes from an idea to actually being built. We are currently working to wrap up the project definition, the scoping part of it. Once that is complete, then it is ready to pursue project funding through pursuing grants. And those are then used to pay for the design, engineering, and construction of the project. Here we have the existing sidewalk, the limits of the existing sidewalk. So on the west side of the study area, the sidewalk ends at Griswold Street, just past the Jericho Elementary School, and some bus stops on Route 15 right there. And on the other side of the project study area, on the easterly side, the existing sidewalks end near Mills Riverside Park and River Road. Also not too far from another bus stop on River Road. It's displayed here. So just taking a look at some of the areas along the study area, some of the different corridors. Vermont 15, the first part of it, starting from Griswold, going to Brown's Trace, had about 8,500 vehicles a day traveling along there in 2022. It begins with a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit and increases to eventually to 50 miles per hour. It has 2 lanes of 12 feet width and 3-foot shoulders. 3-foot shoulders are generally considered inadequate for a bicycle lane. After Brown's Trace, it continues to River Road. About 8,000 vehicles a day were traveling along that portion during 2022. And it speed limit goes from 50 miles an hour down to a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour at the bridge over Browns River. And again, the lanes are 12-foot lanes with 3-foot shoulders. This is a picture of a portion of the existing rail bed on our site visit that's associated with cross-country alternative. There is a portion of that rail bed that is on a parcel that is either recently has completed or is in steps to complete a conservation project with Vermont Land Trust. And part of that project provides public access for this rail bed through that parcel indefinitely. Whereas, as we'll look more closely, there's several other parcels that the rail bed crosses that do not have current easements. Raceway Road itself has not quite 800 vehicles per day in 2022. 35 mph is the posted speed limit. Approximately 24 feet wide, mostly gravel surface. There are some structures that get close to the roadway. Here we see a support structure for a barn that's about 10 feet off the roadway. And here we have a picture of Silly Hill Road. It's a lower volume road, but we don't have a count indicating what the actual volume is. It is posted at 35 mph. Again, about 24 feet wide with a paved asphalt surface. This slide with a lot of text on it is what we refer to as the purpose and need. This is an important part of any scoping study that really pulls together based on existing information and input, why this project is being pursued and what are some of the supporting data or information points to pursue that project. So I'll speak through some of the highlights. I'll read the purpose. The purpose of the study is to construct improvements that increase the safety and mobility of pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users along this corridor, regardless of their age and ability, and also to encourage the use of non-motorized modes of transportation. Some highlights from the needs. Land uses in the corridor do provide origins and destinations, but they lack the multimodal linkages. They lack links, for bikes and pedestrians. There's a general lack of pedestrian connectivity along Route 15 between the residential areas and the nearby schools. While experienced bicyclists do ride along the shoulders on Route 15, they are not adequate to provide safe and comfortable bicycle and pedestrian routes for the range of ages and skill sets of the Jericho cycling population. A portion of the study area along Route 15 is posted at 50 mph, and of course, many vehicles are traveling faster than that. Jericho's Safe Routes to School program a few years back identified a lack of marked crosswalks, a lack of adequate warning systems for existing crosswalks, as well as high vehicle speeds. And the Regional Planning Commission conducted a survey back in 2015, indicating that the majority of those who responded to the survey desire improved bicycle and pedestrian conditions throughout the town of Jericho. So here we have a picture of alternative 1 going along Route 15. Alternative 1 is comprised of portions of sidewalk and portions of shared use path. So it'd be 5-foot sidewalk and then shared use path ranging from 8 foot wide to 10 feet wide. Going along the south side of Route 15, beginning where the sidewalk ends at Griswold Street and continuing all the way to Mills Riverside Park and River Street. This alternative would also include reducing the width of the travel lanes along Route 15 from their current width of 12 feet to 11 feet wide. That generally has a calming effect on traffic. And it provides 4-foot shoulders for bike lanes. They're not quite as large as and comfy as maybe 5-foot shoulders, but they're an improvement over current 3-foot shoulders. On the lower left-hand corner, you can see a typical section of portions where there would be a 10-foot wide path, as well as a varying grass strip aiming for 5 foot wide. This graphic identifies the properties that would be impacted by this alternative. Most of these are permanent impacts. A couple of these would be temporary impacts just during the course of construction. Later, at the end of the presentation, I have some backup slides if anybody is curious about some of the, what impacts would look like for any individual parcel. We do have some role playing graphics that show that. But here we can see that alternative 1 would impact 46 property owners. This is showing alternative 2, the cross-country shared use path. And actually, I'll mention that alternative 1 was not modified as part of this study. It was taken from the previous study. Alternative 2, the cross-country path, has been modified for this study. And so this alternative would begin at Griswold Street with a crosswalk over Vermont 15 to a new segment of 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk going along the northern side of Route 15 to Silly Hill Road. Once you get to Silly Hill Road, there would be signage and markings indicating that pedestrians and bicyclists are using this roadway up to the beginning of the railroad path. And I'll show you some examples of those later on. Some of the slides after this one zoom in to some of the areas along this alignment. But generally it will follow the existing rail bed until it gets to Bittersweet Lane. We'll talk about what it looks like there. And then it will pass a tributary over a small bridge. And then continue following along the river and avoiding the existing agricultural fields as best as possible until it connects to Raceway Road. Upon connecting to Raceway Road, there would be signage to indicate sharing the road on Raceway Road. And so whether or not the town decides to pave Raceway Road, this alternative can follow Raceway Road. So in the event that it stays unpaved, then signage would be installed to indicate that motorists need to slow down and share the road with both bicycles and pedestrians. If Raceway Road were to be paved, then in addition to signage, there would also be markings that would help to raise awareness of sharing the road with bicyclists and pedestrians, as well as additional traffic calming measures. And this would continue to meet back up with Route 15 at Riverside. This graphic shows those properties that would be impacted by the cross-country alternative. It's a lower number of properties, only 7. However, the area, the amount of land is quite significant in terms of the easements that would need to be pursued. This is zooming in to the start of the path from Silly Hill Road. Following along generally how we understand most people access the path today, along the southerly portion of the parcel at 10 Silly Hill Road. There's a drainage ditch there. And just north of the solar arrays that belong to 4 Silly Hill Road. And so if this option were pursued, there would need to be mitigation for drainage and protection of solar arrays. The path would continue easterly, and as you can see, just about where it steps onto the adjoining of the adjacent parcel, it would also begin where its impacts for wetlands, and there would be substantial wetland impacts for that. Following along, eventually the path would reach the river, Browns River, just north of Bittersweet Lane. And so in blue, you see the parcel lines for Bittersweet Lane. As many are probably aware, several years ago, or 2 years ago, there was a lot of damage done, failure of the riverbank at this location. And there were substantial repairs made. If this option were pursued, it would require a surveyor to go out and compare the land that's existing today with what is provided in an easement that covers the path in that area. And if need be, path could be narrowed along this portion from the 10-foot wide path to an 8-foot wide path. As it passes this area, it would cross over an unnamed tributary to Browns River by way of a 16-foot timber bridge crossing. You can also see an existing leach field pointed out, mound system. And so that's another constraint in this area. So there are several constraints in this portion that would need to be worked with. Zooming out, this is the remaining portion of path taking it to Raceway Road. You can see on the left-hand side that 16-foot timber bridge crossing that I just mentioned. From there, the path would follow as close to the river as possible, trying to minimize impacts to the existing agricultural fields that are in use. The path for that portion would be built such that it can handle the load of agricultural equipment for haying those fields. The yellow line represents the limit of the floodplain. And as you can see, the path goes right through the floodplain. And so there are a few different ways that can be dealt with. You can build a path that can be resilient enough to be flooded on occasion and then allow the floodwaters to recede. You can also build it up with some hydraulic structures to aid in getting those floodwaters removed more quickly. Another option would be to use a boardwalk. Generally, if the path were built in this area without bringing in any new fill, that would be the best option. If you do need to bring in more fill, then there would have to be an analysis performed as part of the design process, looking at how the floodplains were determined originally and looking at the impacts of the construction project and how to deal with those. And then you can see here that the path would connect with Raceway Road. And again, if Raceway Road were to be paved separate from this project, then that paving project could add shared lane markings. And those shared lane markings could include what we refer to as sharrows, indicating that motorists should be sharing the road with cyclists. In addition to lane markings, there would also be signage. This is an example to indicate to motorists that this is a road used by bicycles and pedestrians, and you need to share the road. There are some other options. If the road remains unpaved, then it would be relying on signage like this to calm traffic and raise awareness. If there are still concerns for traffic calming, there are some other measures that could be taken. For example, speed feedback signs. If you get to the point where there seems to be, traffic that just doesn't want to be calmed down, then there would likely be funds available. This could be a question for the RPC, but we've done this for other communities where you can perform a speed study and come up with, site-specific traffic calming measures to help along that specific corridor. This shows the third alternative, the hybrid alternative that takes elements from both of the previous alternatives that were just described. Instead of shared use path, it would include a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk beginning at Griswold Street and running along the south side of Route 15 until Raceway Road. This would also include narrowing the travel lanes on Route 15 down to 11-foot lanes, as well as increasing the shoulders to 4-foot shoulders. While there are residential properties along both sides of Route 15 in this area, the north side of Route 15 is where the aerial utility lines are and the poles, as well as several fire hydrants, and those and would generally require more utility relocation, resulting in a higher cost for that project. Upon reaching Raceway Road, there would be a there would be a crossing, a crosswalk, and measures to missing my word, but basically there would be a treatment for that crosswalk to bring attention, and basically probably the first choice would be to use what we refer to as a rapid flashing beacon. It has, I know you have them around here. It has the signs that indicate pedestrian crossing here with an arrow pointing down, and it has a push button on either side that the pedestrian can push, flashes the lights, and provides the opportunity for to raise the awareness for motor vehicles, who are, of course, are required to stop at the crosswalk regardless, but this really helps to bring it to their attention and stop so that the pedestrian or cyclist can make that crossing once they are comfortable that vehicles have stopped for them. On getting to Raceway Road, it would follow Raceway Road similar to the cross-country alternative, using the same measures as I just described for that, except starting from the beginning of Raceway Road and continuing all the way to Route 15. At the top, you can see a typical section for the sidewalk portion, which is only along Route 15, which would include a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk with a variable width grass strip where we would aim for 5 feet wherever possible.
Sean, can I ask for a brief timeout? Representative Graning, who's here, brought to my attention there is a car in the parking lot with its headlights on.
A Honda. That's me.
While we're paused, there is a hand up and there's questions in the chat. I was going to suggest to the chair that we hold questions till the end, but I'm happy to.
I think that's the best way. That's how it's typically done.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean. You're great. All right, go.
So this next graphic shows those, identifies those properties that would be impacted by this hybrid alternative. It would be 29 properties, 2 of which would only be temporary impacts during construction. And again, if there are questions about what those impacts might look like at the end of the presentation, I do have some backup slides that are that show those more clearly. And so Here we have what we refer to as an evaluation matrix, where we compare all the alternatives, all three alternatives that I just described, as well as what we refer to as the no-build alternative, which is hiding behind some block there. But the column, the skinny column there represents what we call the no-build alternative. What would it be like if, you know, you chose to do nothing? And so while that alternative does not meet the purpose and need, we generally include it for baseline comparison. So at the top, you can see we're first looking at construction costs and total project costs. Then we look at how well each alternative addresses the purpose and need. And then we look at how well, or we look at what the different impacts are like in several different categories. So I will spend some time here to speak through them. So first off, project costs. The total project cost for alternative one come to $2.8 million. Project costs for alternative two, the cross-country alternative and Raceway Road, comes to $2.3 million. Excuse me. And the hybrid option comes to just shy of $1.3 million. These costs do not include any costs associated with paving a Raceway Road, as that would be an independent project that is separate from this. You know, that can occur or does not have to occur whether or not this project moves forward, and this project can move forward whether or not Raceway Road is paved. However, in case anybody's interested, there was a paving analysis done back in 2022 for the town of Jericho. And as part of that, they estimated the paving of Raceway Road to be $430,000. Just FYI. So when we look at the purpose and need comparisons, you know, first is, you know, how well do they provide safe, comfortable pedestrian and bicycle connections? Well, the no-build alternative, it doesn't do any of that. The alternative one, we show that it does a pretty good job of that, considering that there are currently no facilities along this corridor. And it does provide separated facilities for the length of the corridor. Some areas a little more separated than others, but it does do that. The cross-country alternative is labeled as better in this category because it avoids the sections of Vermont 15 where the highest traffic is occurring in the 50-mile-per-hour zone. When we look at alternative three, the hybrid alternative, we have that labeled as the best of these in this category. The reason for that is not only does it extend the sidewalk in the residential area, you know, and makes that connection to the schools, and provides, you know, a corridor along Raceway Road, but it you know, in addition to avoiding the highest speed areas of Vermont 15, it also avoids an isolated facility. So while many people would be perfectly comfortable traveling along a cross-country facility that's a bit isolated from the main roadway, some people might not be very comfortable being that isolated, you know, by themselves or you know, with their young ones. And so that was that's what went into these designations here. The next category, facilitate use by all ages, experience levels, and trip purpose. We say that the first two alternatives do a good job of that. We also say that the third alternative does better, namely due to trip purpose. While the cross-country alternative does connect Jericho Corners to Riverside. It also is pretty separated from a lot of the residences. And so it doesn't really provide, say, a walkway to school for residents living along Route 15 in that area that might want to walk to Jericho Elementary School or one of those bus stations or post office and whatnot. So that was where that came from. Or, does this add to the town and regional pedestrian and bicycle network? All three of them does that. Next, we'll talk about impacts. In terms of safety, all three alternatives are an improvement for safety. It's better for bicycles and for pedestrians. In terms of right-of-way impacts, alternative one would have permanent and temporary easements for almost 50 properties. Alternative two would have permanent easements for 6 properties, but as mentioned, even though it's a lower number of properties, there's quite a bit of land that would be impacted along those properties. And for alternative three, there would be permanent and temporary easements for 29 properties. In terms of environmental impacts, there would be wetland impacts associated with alternative one, generally by the river crossing. And there would be much more substantial wetland impacts for alternative two, where the path would be crossing directly through several wetlands. Alternative three would not have any wetland impacts. In terms of cultural resources, there would be potential historic impacts for both alternatives 1 and 3, where they would impact properties that have a historic designation, and so there would be some coordination with the state historic preservation office. For alternative 2, there would likely be there would be potential archaeological impacts. And so generally, if there is any construction being done in an area that was not built on previously, then there might have to be an archaeological study during the design phase, which is not uncommon and is not a showstopper, but it is something to be aware of. For winter maintenance, snowplow. So for alternatives 1 and 3, there, while the design would strive for at least 5 feet of grass strip between the path or the sidewalk and the roadway, and wherever that is accomplished, there is adequate snow storage. But in areas where that green strip has to be less than 5 feet, then that would be considered inadequate snow storage space. And so there would have to be some planning and coordination for snow removal operations during winter maintenance. For alternative 2, cross country, if the town chose to remove the snow along that path, there would be adequate snow storage space. For utilities and drainage impacts, all 3 alternatives would have some culverts and ditch modification. Culverts that would have to be lengthened and ditches that would have to be reworked. There would also be utility coordination for those poles that I mentioned for that's not what I want to say, but for the alternative 1, there would be some utility coordination for some utility poles that would be impacted as part of that alternative. In terms of floodplain impacts, alternative 1 would have some potential minor impacts at and around Browns River Bridge. As discussed for alternative 2, the cross-country alternative, there would likely be significant impacts to the floodplains from the path along the river. And alternative 3 would not have any impacts to floodplains. In terms of stormwater, all 3 alternatives would require a construction general stormwater permit and operational stormwater permit with treatment based on new impervious surface as part of the project. So just went through a lot of information. Hopefully this evaluation matrix is helpful. Based on this information, based on our analysis, we recommend alternative 3, the hybrid alternative. It's the lowest cost. It meets the purpose and need. It extends the sidewalk network from the existing terminus at Griswold Street to through the area of highest residential parcels along Route 15 in this section. And it has fewer impacts in many of these key areas that not only add cost, but also add time to the development of projects. And so the next steps would be for us to seek the endorsement of the select board of the recommended alternative. To then finalize the report, basically saying as much, and then pursue grant funding for design and construction.
Well, thank you for your presentation. We'll take questions now, and we'll probably start with the one that asked during the presentation. But because it looks like there may be quite a few people who wish to speak, we only invoke this as needed, but we'll ask that everybody's, just limit it to 5 minutes until everybody gets a chance to speak for the presentation. And so, do we have the question that was on
So
Zoom?
I'd like to propose a way to handle, I guess I'd rather that not have to read all the questions in chat, because it's not, I just find it's kind of hard.
I
So
just
someone,
thought there was persons who had their hand up.
yeah, so I guess if you have put questions in chat, I would just ask that you raise your hand and we'll do it that way, instead of me trying to interpret what you wrote. If people are okay, if the chair is okay with that.
Yes, I am. But
Okay.
there was somebody who had their hand up.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's,
So I thought we'd start with them and then, back and forth between in person and on Zoom. So that
sure. So
everybody gets-
Jenna had her hand up the longest. So I know it just barely went up now, but it was up before. So
Okay.
Jenna, can you hear?
Or is it Gen A?
Oh. Jen.
there's 4 letters, JENA.
If you're out there, we'd like to provide the opportunity to ask a question.
Sorry, I realized I needed to unmute myself.
Before you jump in, can you state your first and last name, please?
Certainly. My name is Jenna Chafin and I live off Raceway Road.
Thank you, Jen.
My last name is spelled CHAFIN. I had typed my question into the chat, but I'm happy to ask in person. I guess I'm from using Raceway Road unpaved and without a sidewalk. It seems there's already a blinking crosswalk at the end of the road nearest the market. Us to tax. And second to that, I guess I haven't heard is asking for this bike path. Or is this something where
Jenna, sorry, you're cutting in and out.
And I also think, do we have an audio problem? Are we using the wrong audio? Because it shouldn't be hearing it through your speakers. We should be able to hear them through the room. Sorry, everyone. We're just going to try to get the audio a little bit better. But Jenna, you were breaking up a little bit in addition to that challenge.
if you can't hear me?
Yeah, hang on.
We can't answer the question
We're supposed to be on
that
Zoom.
is we just doing this just because? I mean, who's been asking for it?
Yeah.
And we can say that there are a number of studies, including all that the planning commission did with the town plan, that the town would like to have much more connectivity between portions of the community.
It's probably okay, John. It's not worth it. I think most of the audience could hear, so,
It's just the breaking up part was difficult.
yeah.
So beyond that one, I wasn't sure, is it something about paving, but I didn't catch it all.
I'll go ahead and read what she wrote since she's having audio issues. What precludes bicyclists from using Raceway Road unpaved and without the sidewalk? There's already blinking light at the end of the road nearest the market. That's already there.
Well, Raceway, well, I mean, we could have Mr. Sean answer that one.
Sure. So nothing currently precludes anybody from walking or bicycling along Raceway Road. We understand that is already occurring. As part of the recommended alternative, what would be added would be some signage to help calm traffic and make that environment a little more comfortable for those who are choosing to ride or walk Raceway Road. You know, designating it as a bicycle and pedestrian route, adding signage, you know, just helps to raise awareness. But yeah, right now, I mean, it's understood that there are some maintenance issues going on during winter and whatnot, but you know, it's available now to walk and bike along.
Next, we have,
No, we're gonna do from the room. We're gonna go back and forth.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yep.
Okay,
They don't have their hands up.
is there anybody here who wishes to speak, does have a question? Oh, wow, well, then we'll.
Oh.
Going once.
I didn't want to go first, but here I am. They're asking you to change the camera to the room. The view.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
This is Jessica Dion, DION. And
Okay.
I had a few things, a data point to add about the floodplain across Dean Davis's hayfield, which is I regularly run that route and watched the potential path area all summer, particularly during all of our big flood events that we've had in July and even this fall, where there was significant flooding in other parts. The river was raging. It never breached that bank. It never flooded that field. So I just want to offer that as a data point that if I were to be involved in the engineering, and I'm absolutely not an engineer, I wouldn't be as concerned now about, I think it would have to be a truly catastrophic flood event to breach that bank. So that's just a data point. The other thing that I wanted to say was, although I understand that there is a leaning toward the hybrid model. As someone who's lived here for a while and who's watched the town plan take shape, I would hope in the long term for a sidewalk that goes all the way from Griswold to Riverside, not necessarily on Route 15, but from Raceway, there is a larger number of options through the commercial district that may not involve being right next to the road. And so I just want to throw out there in the long-term plan that either dropping the speed limit from 50 to 35 or trying to find a pedestrian walkway that would go through the commercial district that would be far enough away from the road to not be terrifying would really enhance our ability to, I was just talking to a friend of mine who said, you know, I'd love to walk from Starbird to Jerry Hill and not have to get in my car just to go to the hardware store. So it's that kind of connectivity where we may not even realize how much it would mean. But if we could get all of these neighborhoods connected to the commercial district, I think the actual development in Riverside in the commercial district would be great. It would be a win-win. That's my comment.
Thank you very much.
That's a great point. You could like walk down to the dentist office, right? Like, and then down
Yeah.
past the autosmith, and that's kind of cool.
Well, what was interesting is, that's it's been pointed out that doing one does not preclude doing the other long term.
True. Now would you like to go back to
Yes, I would.
Zoom? All right, I think Maria Young is next. And I apologize if I'm going out of order. I'm doing the best I can, so.
Maria, can you
Yeah.
hear?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Good. So my question was just regarding alternative 2, and I was looking at the presentations, the prior presentations, and at the July 2023 public meeting where you had a presentation on the alternatives, the total project cost for alternative 2 was $3,070,000. But tonight's presentation for that alternative 2 has a total project cost of 2.3 million. So I was just wondering, what does that 770,000 reduction in total project costs represent? That was my first question. And then I had another question on the alternative 3, the hybrid, and previous with the Silly Hill Railbed Raceway considered advisory shoulders on Raceway. So I wondered, in hybrid 3, are advisory shoulders still under consideration for Raceway, or would it just stay the way it is?
So those are good questions. The cost reductions was due to not paving Raceway Road. So that was the difference there. In terms of the advisory shoulders, we took that out as a recommendation because currently under FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, it's still a preliminary practice. It's not, it hasn't made itself into their standards yet. And so we were reluctant to recommend a preliminary practice. It's, if the town chose to try it, they can choose to try that. But that's why we removed it and chose to focus on other measures, other methods of calming traffic and sharing the road, essentially relying on signage and potential markings.
Thank you for that. I just don't think signage is going to do a whole lot to calm traffic or slow drivers down that just fly down Raceway. I don't see that really will have a great impact on how cars travel down the road. They may see the sign, but I just think that's not going to help a whole lot to calm traffic, just in my opinion. I mean, sometimes you're walking down the road and you have to jump off to, because someone's flying by you and they're just not paying attention. So I think you're still going to have those kind of drivers coming down Raceway. So I don't know if there are some kind of studies, or I'm sure you've looked at that to see that signage does. I mean, there must be some statistic that shows that signage does help calm the traffic, but I just, in my experience, I just don't think that's going to work.
So appreciate your input. Signage is a starting point. Other options can be included and looked at during design, including speed feedback signs is another one. But if there are measures implemented to help calm traffic and they are not being successful, or they're not, there's still traffic that is resistant to calming and you know, further measures need to be taken. There are opportunities to, you know, make use of regional resources, the Regional Planning Commission, to actually conduct a speed study. That's generally what we would do when, you know, when we're looking at an area where there's complaints of high speeding traffic and demand for traffic calming. And so that could be a separate study of, you know, actually looking at the speed profiles, the speed characteristics and driving characteristics along that roadway, to help determine what else can be done to mitigate traffic speeds and to calm traffic speeds. If the town chose to pave Raceway Road, of course, there's trade-offs, but paving Raceway Road does provide additional opportunities for calming traffic in terms of lane reductions, in terms of speed humps, in terms of transverse rumble strips, and other methods to help calm traffic more.
All right, thanks.
Question from-
Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
feedback. Thank you.
Yes, please come to the table and state your name.
Hi, Lauren Montgomery Reinhardt. Two things. So this woman who just spoke, she mentioned something, but I don't know what it is. So if you could possibly explain what's being referred to. Something about calming, how come you're not doing it, or you took it out and you said because it wasn't, whatever.
Sure. Yes. So she was asking about, previously we were showing what's referred to as an advisory lane. And so it's a treatment where basically if you have a roadway that, you know, is a lower volume roadway usually, it doesn't have a center line marked on it. It doesn't have, you know, your typical lane lines marked, but what it does have is what are called advisory lanes, which are basically two dotted lines, which, you know, if you're just looking at it, might look like really wide shoulders with a single lane down the middle. And it also is accompanied by signage, basically telling drivers what to do in this situation. And so basically, you know, those shoulders are available for pedestrians or cyclists to use. A motorist that's driving down the road can drive along that, you know, shoulder area until they reach a bicycle or pedestrian in that shoulder, in which case they move out into the middle. When two cars are coming towards each other, and there's also pedestrian or bicycles, you know, it creates a yield situation where, you know, similar to getting to a one-lane bridge, you need to slow down and stop sometimes, and, you know, and let the driver pass. And there are some examples, you know, nearby. The city of Burlington has an advisory lane on Flynn Avenue, which goes between, which basically runs not too far from Pine Street going into Oak Ledge Park. And so I used to live nearby, and I would walk that all the time and see that advisory lane being used. And so it is an option, you know, and the reason that we took it out was basically because it's currently, I'm not sure if I'm remembering the exact term, but it's kind of a preliminary option that can be used. It's just not currently officially adopted by Federal Highway Administration.
Okay, thank you. That was one, my original question, is that
Okay.
right? And it has to, I'm sorry, I came in a little late. From Griswold to say Packard for option 1 and option 3, is it the same thing?
I think the answer is yes. So from Griswold to Packard, yeah, from Griswold to Raceway, essentially. Alternative 1 and alternative 3 would be the same, would be a 5-foot sidewalk.
And the grassy patch is for snow?
Snow and drainage for stormwater. And so because the roadway is unpaved, it provides an area for drainage to leave the roadway. You know, the roadway is crowned at 2% on each side, so that when the rain falls, hits the roadway, it drains off the side of the roadway. And having a 5-foot wide grass strip, that's maintained reasonably well, provides the space for that water to drain down into the soil.
Is that non-negotiable? Do we have to, is that set? It's 5 feet or it's nothing?
Well, no, so it's a variable grass strip. We aim for 5 feet. There are situations where 5 feet, different constraints, you can't reach that. And so some areas that might be narrowed down to less than 5 feet. And it's those areas that wouldn't have sufficient snow storage and would require some coordination during snow removal operations.
Oh. Location,
132?
Route 15,
Mm-hmm.
the ledge,
Beg your pardon?
right where the ledge outcrop is?
No.
No, that's not, okay.
Thank you. Next on Zoom,
We have one more, Stacy's iPhone.
Hi there, thank you. Sean,
Name?
you had mentioned federal highway money and paving on Raceway. So is there an opportunity for money through the federal highway if it was paved? And is that block granted money? That's my first question. Second,
Sorry.
I'm going to ask them all because I've been trying to remember them all while we've been listening to everybody. My second question is kind of piggybacking off of what Jenna said and who asked for this, because I think what we're feeling on Raceway and all those developments off of that we really haven't been asked to be part of this conversation. And what Maria had said was, you want to calm traffic, so maybe a speed study would be beneficial prior to this project, because for us who use Raceway on a daily basis, it is extremely hard to get out there. So safety, as we see on your graphs, or it says it's one of the greatest situations, but it may not really translate that well. And then my last question is, as far as the crosswalks, I asked this last week and didn't really get an answer. And pardon me, I've been gone for a week, so it may have been fixed since then. But the crosswalk from a Raceway to the market has been out of commission for 6 to 8 months now. I mean, and that doesn't seem to be working. So if we proceed with these projects, what is the plan for maintenance?
Stacy, I'm sorry, I believe you asked the question previously. Could you just give us your last name for the record?
Jorshik?
Jorshek, thank you.
It's Jorshik.
Dorset, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me try and address those one at a time. So let's see, the first question was
the federal highway monies and,
right.
Is there block grants available? If it's paved, is there a better opportunity as opposed to not being paved?
Right. So that's a good question. I don't have that. I was not involved in that study. I'm not sure what the current plan is. I'll reach out. Let's see. So Israel, my colleague, Israel Maynard's on the line. I don't know, Israel, if you have a quick answer to that. Else that might be something that I'd have to circle back on and provide the select board with that answer later on.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so this particular project is, if I'm not wrong, is funded by a CCRPC grant. So this one is not federal FHWA grant. If we went forward after this project and moved in, there are a couple of grant programs like Vermont Bike Ped grants or Transportation Alternatives grants, the TA grants. None of those typically are used for road paving. Those programs are specific to pedestrian accommodation. There could be an opportunity to submit an application that's suggesting paving that road as part of the pedestrian network would be a benefit to the pedestrian network. There may be some logic there for utilizing a grant program like that for road paving and pedestrian accommodation.
Thanks, Israel. And you know, if paving Raceway Road were pursued just completely separate from this project as its own independent project, what would be some funding opportunities, you know, on that method in terms of, you know, federal funding?
So federal funding typically doesn't go towards converting existing gravel roads to paved roads. So I'm not aware of any program there that would be available for grants.
And so nothing available through the state for that?
I don't believe so.
Christine has her hand up that may be appropriate to
Yeah.
answer.
Yes,
Yes, she may have some.
she knows.
Yeah, so hopefully this is helpful to this. It's for the federal funds, it has to be a federal aid highway, and Raceway is not federal aid, so it would not be a federally funded project. There are state funds available. I'm not sure what class state highway this is, but there's a potential that there could be an application for a grant for the state to do some work on it, but as a town road, it's likely to be a town responsibility.
What I thought, because it's only class 3.
And then did she have other questions you were going to try to?
Yeah, so let's see. So the second question, any hints?
Stacy, brief refresher on question number 2.
It's who asked you this?
Yep,
Oh.
speed study prior to moving forward to this. You talked about the Regional Planning Commission could be
Right.
able to do a speed study. It may be beneficial to do that prior to implementing this, because I think the common theme seems to be that, you know, for us who use this road, it is not safe, that it's a pass-through road. And the fact is we don't have police that are monitoring this road on a day-to-day basis. So there isn't a lot of governance on who's using the road. So it can get pretty hairy out there. So it would probably be beneficial to have a speed study done prior to implementing any of this.
Appreciate your input. You know, Christine might have you might want to chime in on this. You know, I could see it happening either way. You know, you can pursue this project as is, and during design, the design phase of this project, you can pursue different traffic calming measures that are available, which would likely show some improvement over existing conditions. You know, if those measures didn't seem like they were getting the job done as well as the community would like it to be done, and they're still, you know, they're still experiencing some speeding issues, you know, that at that point, a speeding study could be pursued for additional traffic calming. You know, I'd be curious, you know, input from the CCRPC or, you know, from the town's perspective. But it seems like if Raceway Road is already being used, you know, by pedestrians and cyclists, then adding signs to help calm the traffic doesn't seem like it would make the situation worse to me.
But it also won't make it better. And so I think to be responsible to the folks that are going to be helping to pay for this, not maybe initially, but in the long term, we have a responsibility to make sure. I mean, nobody would build a house and say, I'm going to start building it and decide halfway through it that I'll see what I've got for expenditures. And then if I don't have enough, we'll reevaluate it. Or if it's not working, go back to the drawing board. I think we have a responsibility to dot all our I's and cross our T's before we get there. And, you know, you're segueing into my third question was, I don't remember anybody asking me. You know,
Well,
and
well-
I'm an active user of that road, but I don't ever remember anybody asking me what my input was on that. And then to my fourth question was, I do walk to the store and I like to go across Route 15, but I can't do that in a safe manner at this point. So even though we have signage, and even when the crosswalk is working, that doesn't mean that cars stop on 15. So as much as I would like to have this altruistic view that people do follow what's in front of them, that doesn't happen. So, you know, I'm not for or against this, but I want to make sure it's done in a responsible manner.
Sure. So going back to your point about, the project costs, for the recommended alternative, the great majority of the costs are associated with the sidewalk. The cost of adding signage to Raceway Road would be marginal, in terms of overall project costs. And so really, pursuing the project as it's been scoped provides the town with, the opportunity to pursue a new, well-designed and built sidewalk, extending that network, through this residential area. And it would also add some traffic calming options. Those traffic calming options, if Raceway Road is unpaved, are pretty inexpensive. And
Could you reiterate on what those are?
Sure. So it would essentially be signage of different kinds. Signage expressing to motorists that this is a roadway that is used by bicycles and pedestrians, and that they must share the road, and that they must slow down.
And does that happen?
Yes, that's why we use those signs.
No, but I mean, you can show that people see a sign and they say, I'm going to slow down. Just like in front of my house, there's a 35-mile-an-hour sign. So you're telling me when they exit 15 and enter onto Raceway that they are traveling 35 at that point, or are they doing 45 or 50? But I can tell you from my experience, but I'm not trying to be, argumentative. I'm trying to be realist about this. Like it just isn't that way though.
And like I said, if the
Noted.
initial.
All we can do is,
Sounds good.
it's noted.
It's noted. Thank you for your input. Your next question was about not being asked for your input. And I believe that there were notifications that went out across the town, which is why we've had good turnout, not only at this present meeting, but at the local concerns meeting a year ago, where the room was full, and actually I think it was about standing room only. So, I believe those communications were made to collect input from anybody and everybody. We were asking for anybody's input. That's what helps these projects move forward.
And then my fourth question was the crosswalk at 15 and Raceway maintenance, and then the maintenance going forward.
She said
with
the thing is not working.
Yeah, I can jump in there. So for folks who aren't aware, that sign was damaged by a motorist, and we had significant issues supply chain wise getting the sign replaced. Since we received that sign, the highway road foreman Fletcher Edye has been working with the sign company to get the new sign flasher to communicate with the old sign. They have different hardware. So he's working to get it done, and it may be that we have to order a new sign that will match the new sign that we purchased as a replacement. And the other thing that I'll say, and I haven't had a chance to have much discussion, if at all, with the select board, is I've had conversations, been thinking about the intelligence of having a sign company that could provide ongoing maintenance and support. It's really difficult for a road crew as small as ours. And with the present need for road maintenance, road clearing in the winter, to be able to respond when residents would prefer. That said, we'd have to do financial analysis to see what the cost benefit might be in that regard and what the expense would be.
Well, and so absolutely, and I am not dissing the road crew at all. I think they do a fabulous job, but I think you kind of
Thank you.
answered
I'd
my
like to hear
question
that.
too, is, you know, that sign has been down for how long?
I have no idea.
8 months?
No, I don't think it's been 8 months.
It's been-
It's been a long time, and I would.
Yeah.
No, we have to move,
Yeah.
No, but I just have to say I think it's important I say this. So, and your road crew is fabulous. Our road crew is fabulous. But if you're talking about maintenance, all of this stuff, and if you're saying that they're already extended to their max and all of these things are important to this
Yeah.
progression.
point.
It's a good point.
If we
will-
can't. Well, thank you.
It's a very good point, but thank
Yeah,
you. We have to
Martha.
move on.
It is front and center on our radar.
We have Peter Booth.
Peter Booth, I live on Route 15 down by Riverside. I have just a couple questions and comments. The one, and this is working from notes when you were speaking half an hour ago. I have a note about the lane width being taken down from 12 feet to 11 feet at some area of Route 15, and I'm guessing that's not going to be a repaving situation, but just a moving of the white line.
That's correct. You know, unless there was, you know, a planned paving operation in the near future, you know, yes, it would be just a restriping, you know.
And what?
You can remove the existing striping and add a new striping.
And my comment on that is that the town did that a few years back on Brown's Trace, and I ride bicycles around, and on Brown's Trace it had just about no effect, and to the point where the white stripe disappeared pretty quick because everyone just drove over it, and the paint got worn away very fast because it wasn't really having the effect that was hoped for. And that's just a comment, anecdotal, which I understand you have data, and I would bow to that, obviously. And then just in terms of Raceway as a space, I do wonder, thinking about traffic calming, if you have any opinions professionally around the idea that was thrown out on Front Porch Forum to literally just cut it in half and put up 2 Jersey barriers and make it not a pass through. So you can only go to the end that you're going to.
Like when I moved there and
when the bridge was broke,
out.
exactly. It's exactly like when the bridge was broke.
Yeah.
And I would just, this may make me super unpopular, sorry. All the folks along Raceway who are talking about everyone driving dangerously down that road and everyone's flying through and using it as a cut through for 15. I will tell you that the distance from Merchants, from what's the new bank called? From
Used to be Merchants.
From Community Bank to the market is 1.5 miles exactly on Route 15, and also 1.5 miles on Raceway. And I believe that absolutely 0 people are cutting through on Raceway because it's not faster. It's significantly slower and less safe. And I think that most of the speeders that I've encountered on Raceway walking on the road are people who live in all those areas. And often, I mean, so damn kids, it's often young kids ripping down the road, coming out of the foothills and hanging a right and tearing off down the road. So I hear the conversation about the pass through down to Raceway. I don't believe it's happening at all. And I would fully support throwing up 2 Jersey barriers in the middle of Raceway and just see what it's not going to cost anything. I mean, it's going to cost a couple $100. And it doesn't work. Everyone hates it and it's a disaster. Doesn't do anything. Then just take them off. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, we have,
Should I respond or?
if you like.
So just a quick response, you know, that's helpful input about the line striping. You know, that would be, you know, there are different options of how that line striping is chosen, you know, the materials that are used for it. And so that should be a consideration, or would be a consideration to use more durable line striping to prevent, you know, the issue that you were talking about. As to, you know, in terms of your suggestion with the Jersey barriers, I would I would think about it. I would entertain that, but you know, I think might be a tough sell, you know, might be a tough sell for the town. It would take, you know, some analysis there. You know, I'd be curious, yeah, how that would go over with the public. It probably wouldn't be my first choice. It's a little bit out of the box, but you know, I would be curious to, you know, do some analysis of that. It's beyond the scope of this study. But you know, it's creative. And your third one? What's it? Is that? Okay, thank you.
Oh, they're getting right that I think Raceway.
Oh, yeah, and that makes sense.
Hugh's been up there a long time, right?
Yes.
He was next, yes.
So I'm gonna make one more thing. Sorry, the Jersey barrier wasn't my idea. Jack Manning put that on Front Porch Forum. So when it goes off and it's super successful, credit to Jack Manning.
Good evening, everybody. This is Hugh Griffiths. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, super. I have 3 questions, potentially 2, depending on how the first question is answered. But first, I'd like to comment and sympathize with the select board and both the DRB with regards to reaching out to the community to warn folks of events and meetings. Given the myriad ways of communicating these days, it's a challenge, and I sympathize with you because I, for one, have been one of the people that have been left out of the loop. Not because you haven't tried, but because I haven't logged on to Front Porch Forum, or you know, this warning I happen to receive by mail, and that goes to my first question. And I'm subject of 2 warnings by the town regarding wastewater in both Route 15 and Jericho Center, as well as the bike path in Route 15. And brings me to my first question. In the first proposition, you have a depiction of proposed shared use path with the utility lines on one side of the road and the bike path on the other. It's my understanding that on the south side of Route 15 across from Jerry Hill is where the bike path is planned. It's also where the utility lines exist. Was the intent to move the utility lines on that side of the road in order to afford the bike path?
Which alternative are you talking about?
Alternative 1, correct. Across from Jerry Hill, it's parcel, I think it was 39-ish. And pardon me while I'm disseminating my chicken scratch on the backside of an envelope while I parse through my questions here.
Sure. Yeah. So I see where you're talking about near parcel 39. So yes, yep. And I can do a quick drop in there with Street View here to confirm. But yes, I believe that's the area where that alternative would include some utility relocation.
Okay,
because
so
that area, it's on the south side. When you know,
gotcha.
close
So
to
basically, so basically, the intent with all of the options, or at least most of them, is to relocate the electrical or the power lines in order to accommodate the bike path or pedestrian path. Is that correct?
only if needed. Only if needed.
Okay.
So the western portion between Griswold Street and Raceway Road, the utility lines are on the north side of the road.
Got it. Yep.
But yeah, if you know, when they get to the south side, there may be areas where they need to be relocated, and there may be some areas where relocation can be avoided. But if they require relocation, then that's what would happen.
Gotcha. And I guess this kind of necessitates the second question, in as much as how it relates to the town's plans for wastewater, which were discussed earlier. And given the potential for the lot number 39 to be, again, I was warned as such, and the warning was kind of difficult to discern whether it pertained to property on Route 15 or property in Jericho Center, because both are areas of study. But so it never clarified which parcel it was referring to. So I was warned accordingly, though. But I'm just curious, given the utility easement, given the bike path easement, and then also given the setbacks from the wetland setbacks, the usability of that parcel after these plans have taken place, if the utilities aren't relocated, and if the bike path retains its 10-foot width, what the setbacks are around that leaves a, particularly given the size and nature of that site, a nearly unusable parcel. And just wanted to point that out so that it's noted, and also what that would look like with regards to the town's plans for wastewater, if that indeed is a parcel that is considered for use in that regard. The last question, I guess that was more of a statement, the second one, but the last question was, if there are plans for alternative 2 or 3, would there be access to the cul-de-sac on North Main Street, and or Jerry Hill, Kate's, or Dollar General? What would be the means of accessing those properties? And I'm in favor of creating a bike path, just for my own, just putting it out there. The 50-mile-an-hour speeds, 50-plus-mile-an-hour speeds on Route 15 are questionable with regards to the bike path. I would, in addressing the concerns on Raceway with its current state, I think putting a bike path in would create more ditching and more addressing of these issues. But I've also had dropped off kids on Raceway, and have been privy to some of the folks speeding at 50+ miles an hour down Raceway as well. So questioning whether or not that's viable, it may be contradictory to say, hey, Raceway is the way to go, but then at the same time say there's absolutely speeding issues there. But anyway, I just, I guess that was my last bit, and I'll take it from there. Thanks for being here tonight.
Well, thanks for being patient, Hugh. Any more comments from folks in person? Well,
Was anyone going to respond to my fourth question with regards to connecting Main Street?
oh, sorry, we missed it.
Or in terms of connecting South Main Street or North Main Street, so the alternative 3 would include bike lanes, reduced lane widths on Route 15 in bike lanes. However, the sidewalk would stop at Raceway Road, and that alignment would continue along Raceway Road, not as a path, but as a shared roadway.
Thank you, Hugh.
Or Edie. Okay,
Me?
yes, you're.
Good evening. I'm Lonnie Morris, and I live off of Raceway as well. I brought some visuals to the select board, and you can follow along and or use those at your leisure after this evening. I'll chime in first on a few of the statements tonight about Raceway being a cut through. And I'm not sure how much it is used as a cut through. I think most everybody that's ever tried to use it as a cut through knows it's a dirt road, and certainly anybody that's tried to use it in the condition it's in, such as right now during the winter time, would go 10 miles out of the way to travel and not use Raceway Road. But I think the traffic has increased. I think some of it has to do with, forgive me because I live right out back, but I don't know the church's name. Covenant Church, possibly. Catalyst Church, thank you. That gets quite a lot of traffic there. It's not just a weekend service church. It has activities, and good for them. They're packed all the time. I would say sometimes it's 6 nights a week. There's a full parking lot there, and people are gathering and doing things in the community and getting together, and that's good. But I think that also adds to a tremendous amount of car trips per day on Raceway Road for what activities are taking place at the church. So just to speak to some of that issue. I attended the Zoom by Zoom. I attended the meeting back in July, presentation by the Planning Commission, and that was where they presented the options of these different segments to the Select Board. And at that point in time, that evening, I believe the cross-country option had just become something that was added to the presentation. And forgive me if I'm misspeaking, but I believe that was the case at the time. I think it was added very shortly before that meeting took place. And Sean, were you the one presenting that night back in July?
I was not.
I didn't think you were. But it seemed to be, it wasn't, the cross-country path was not part of the previous public outreach education and any of the group settings that the Planning Commission had, and they threw to, I don't want to speak like that. They added the cross-country option to the presentation to Select Board at kind of the 11th hour. I'll describe it as that. And it wasn't very complete, and there were a lot of questions about the routing and the impacts and what it would look like, etc. And at that time, the gentleman who presented from Stantec indicated that Raceway would need striping that would help indicate the sharing of the road with bicyclists and to promote safety to those bicyclists. It has changed now that doesn't seem to be an indication that that's part of the presentation. I know that Sean has indicated that at some time, if Raceway were to be paved,
That's what they have.
certainly they would add the striping. But I just wanted to point out that back in July, that was kind of a statement as part of the presentation that in order to make Raceway a safe, shared pedestrian, bicyclist, vehicle travel way, that the shared striping would have to be in place. And I know many people on the call that had any Raceway ties at that time were concerned about that, having bicyclists on the road on their normal everyday use of the road in their traveling. Oh, where was I going with that? Sorry. Oh, the point was made that, you know, in order to stripe the road, it would need to be paved, obviously, as Sean has pointed out, that's when you would stripe it. I have some knowledge about the costs of road work, and redoing Raceway the correct way would be a tremendous undertaking. I think it's much more than what Sean is indicating at $430,000. And reading that report, Sean, I'm not sure if that's just paving or if it's
I may have misspoken.
You're correct. That's what it says in the report. I'm just not sure that it's anything other than paving and
You have to
grading.
rebuild the base and everything else. I mean, it's substantial because that's, you know, what was done to us.
Yes.
Other roads.
Otherwise, you're throwing money away if you're just trying to put blacktop down so you can paint some lines on it. At that meeting, I had learned just prior to that Zoom meeting or the Planning Commission's presentation to the Select Board of that meeting taking place, and that there was a third option of the cross-country route and using, at that time, it was just 3/4 of the length of Raceway because we were going to travel across the Dean Davis property. And at that time, I was kind of discouraged that this was being presented and the Select Board was supposedly supposed to act on those options that evening, but chose not to. And I had asked that in future presentations, if it would seem appropriate to me that all the residents that live on that impacted Raceway Road of now turning that into a shared use path, if they could be more readily notified and given notice about participating in the discussions about what options might be chosen and to give their input, being that they actually live on the road that's being impacted.
You mean in a
And
different way than which you were notified about this particular meeting? Or do you mean earlier? Like, I'm not sure I'm following that.
so I said that I wasn't well notified as being someone who is a stakeholder living on Raceway Road of the July meeting.
Oh, the July meeting, yeah.
And I'd asked that in future meetings, if Raceway Road was going to become an option as a cross-country alternative, that some direct outreach be given to those people who were abut Raceway Road and who would actually affect them on a day-to-day basis. And the select board said, absolutely. I've got the minutes here that would be done. I have not been notified, and I don't want to start the meeting off like that, but I just want to make a point that I live on Raceway Road. I have land that abuts Raceway Road, and I had no knowledge of being made aware that this presentation was happening this evening.
I mean,
I can give you a copy of the mailing list that we sent out letters for. It is possible that there are some omissions or errors in it.
We just got ours yesterday.
Yeah, the
I
mail
would say that's
also.
another one.
Yeah. You know, the post office.
Moving on, many of this connectivity study throughout town, as Sean has pointed out, has been going on for years and years and years. There has been desire throughout the community to look into connectivity, as it's always referred to, so we can connect different destinations in town with one another. Originally, the studies were about connecting the corners that we're in now with Jericho Center. One of the studies actually pointed that out as being the priority at the time of that study, might have been 2015, that people involved or the consultant at the time was suggesting and advising that Jericho Corners to Jericho Center was the priority connectivity route at the time. The next highest priority would have been Jericho Center to Riverside. And then the last third on the list, I won't call it the last because I think there was some other routes that had been studied and offered options for pricing and valuation. But the third on the study was Riverside to Jericho Corners. And again, all the studies that have been going on has been all about pedestrian. Sorry, I'm trying to read my scribble here. Traveling to and having access to destinations and encouraging walking and biking over vehicle use. I think Sean has referred to a lot of these as alternatives, but at one time I think maybe Raceway was the alternative to the maybe presentation 1 and 2 or options 1 and 2, and then Raceway or the cross country path was the alternative. So
they're all considered
now they're all
everything's an
alternatives,
alternative
yes.
other than
Okay.
doing nothing.
other than doing.
One of the maps
Well, technically, that is.
Even that's an alternative. Yeah. I don't know why they use that word either. It's weird.
So a path is all about connecting people to destinations. I wanted to show you on the map right there that using Raceway as an alternative, Raceway Road, if you start at Raceway Road in the bank and you travel Raceway Road to get to the first sidewalk you come to, which is at the Route 15 intersection across from the new Jericho Market, on that map there indicates that it's a traveling trip of 1.3 miles and 29 minutes by walking. If you were to start that same point at Raceway Road in the bank and continue on Raceway Road, start at Raceway Road in the bank and continue on 15 to the first sidewalk you come to as a Jolly store where sidewalk already exists. So you'd be able to connect to that infrastructure there being constructed in the triangle. It's 1.4 miles and 32 minutes. So a little bit longer. The benefits of traveling on, let's say the drawbacks rather of traveling Raceway is it has one destination. You're going from the bank Anybody that's been on Raceway before knows it's a highly residential. I referred to it in July as an old farm path. I'm sure that's how it started one time along, just traveling the fields that were on both sides of that road. And it hasn't really evolved beyond that to this day. But it's a narrow old cow path, dirt road. There's nothing there as a destination unless you're walking to that church that I talked about, which would reduce our travel trips per day on Raceway. But the only true destination is the whole other end of Raceway Road, which is 1.3 miles to get to the Jericho Market. I'm sorry, to get to the new store there in the commercial district. And then you have to walk further to get to anywhere else, like Browns River Middle School or to the Jolly Store. You're kind of backtracking back toward the corners at that point. I've lived here all my life and I've looked around. I know what the connective routes are. I've done a lot of walking back in the day. So I've kind of eyeballed these connectivity routes that have been discussed over the years and how could you get here and how could you get there? How would be a safer way that everybody's talking about accomplishing these things? Obviously, we're worried about keeping children safe and staying off the road. How would you do that? Well, I've looked and tried to envision the path options to facilitate the desired connectivity of the corners to Riverside. Once people arrive at Raceway Road, I'm not going to speak to from Griswold Street to Raceway Road because I know that impacts a lot of people. Again, that's their front yards, that's their residential life living there, that's their experience there. And I'm not going to speak to that, but Sean's laid out how we address impacting them as little as possible. But once you get to Raceway Road on Route 15, I cannot perceive a better location for a shared use path than on the north side of Route 15 to Brown's Trace Road. The route is almost entirely along commercial property and entirely in the commercial district. Much of the path, much of that stretch is lighted already with street lights. And if there are some dark spots, it's because there aren't street lights on existing electric poles along that route where it could be lit in its entirety or much better, or almost 100%, however you want to describe that, along that route with existing electric poles on the north side of Route 15.
So I do think that you're over 5 minutes.
I am sorry.
All great
Okay,
stuff.
okay.
We have told other people they had to.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out that one big topic is that once you get to Route 15 and Brown's Trace Road, now there's a light there, all in the commercial district property. You could cross over then to the now former Clark's Truck Center property, which is also commercial, and that connects you to Brown's Trace Road. If you cross Brown's Trace Road to head to Mills Riverside Park, that's the old Balch property, and my understanding there, when a lot of that property transfer took place, I believe there's a easement along Route 15 on the Balch property for a shared use path to get from Brown's Trace to Mills Riverside Park. If there's not an easement, I think maybe the town owns that property or it's been turned over to open property for its. And what I wanted to point out is that by using Raceway, I think you're missing all that opportunity to create the path that gets to Brown's Trace Road, thus then being part of that connectivity from Brown's Trace up to Mount Mansfield, Jericho Center, et cetera.
Thanks for the future.
Well, that may be, but if you go Raceway Road, you're nowhere near Jericho Center.
That point, I got that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me ramble on and
thank
trying
you.
to get through my thoughts and
Yeah, unfortunately,
yep.
We
I would encourage the select board and planning commission and anyone else who's interested to sometime this summer, walk up and down Raceway a few times and experience the narrowness and the traffic and the blind hills and blind corners. And again, it's a cow path that's existed for 100 years. And it's not something that we would like to turn into a bike path that we need to drive our vehicles on.
Why'd they name it Raceway then?
who was next on the, was it Martha or Matt?
I think Martha's been up longer. It's showing Matt is ahead. She may have taken hers down and put it back up, but I think Martha is technically next.
Yeah, sorry, we missed Edye. I'm sorry. But I mean.
We should have had this meeting as the only thing on the agenda. We knew it was gonna be long. Sorry.
But it's important
guys.
to be able to talk.
Hi, Martha, we can hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
Yeah.
I agree with Peter on the whole idea of, Raceway. It's not the greatest alternative to, if you're trying to get to somewhere and get it clean and get it to there. The other one on option 2, I believe that was the Silly Hill Road. Is there any way off from that? And the other thing is, if we're trying to get some kids or younger kids, it's good for adults if they want to run it. But if we start having some children out in there, that's probably not your safest district to put kids out into. That would be my opinion. If I was a parent of a 10-year-old, I wouldn't want them out there on the side of the river. The other thing about the power, if they did that along Route 15, would they do underground power? Which a lot of the companies are trying to start to do anyway. The other thing is, how far is it right now if we're trying to look from Jericho Elementary going up through, and this one you're starting at Griswold. You get all your developments in there. And we're talking a whole lot about paving Raceway, and I think this bike path kind of adds in, it gives some fuel for Raceway to be paved. I think, is there any possibility, I mean, is this an all or nothing? Can we put something on so that, say, we do Griswold up to where Packard Road is and where Raceway is, and see what the next few years bring as far as Raceway, without having this be a clincher of saying we need to pave it because we have one more thing added of putting a bike path there. Is there a way to do this?
Martha, what you've just described is option 3.
Yeah.
Option 3 does not include paving Raceway Road as presented here tonight. It just extends the sidewalk from Griswold to the
Packard, essentially.
almost Packard Raceway.
Well, the other issue you're talking about is in phases. Almost all our other sidewalks have done in phases because it's unlikely you'll get a grant for the entire project. I mean, was 4 different projects for the just the walkway in Jericho Center from the center store to go to the high school, and the third and the last section hasn't even been. It's been turned down multiple times, and we're still trying to get that last section done. And then, but that's one of the bigger projects. But even when the first go around with the trying to do Route 15, it was broken into 4 or 5 different segments trying to get grants. So let's try Griswold to here, see if the state will fund this, or how about from here to here to see if the state will fund that. But as Linda has pointed out, none of those segments got funded. So, I mean,
so is
Sean
that
can
the,
answer and so Sean can answer what he can answer out of this as well.
I think you covered it pretty well. Was there earlier part of that was a question, another question?
She was concerned about the isolation of kids near the river.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That's covered in the evaluation matrix in terms of comfort. That's why we gave the hybrid option alternative 3 a higher rating for comfort and for ultra purposes is because of that isolation factor of the cross-country option.
so that third option was so that was only going up to where Raceway begins by the bank?
Yes, there would be a sidewalk up to Raceway Road. And then the only improvements on Raceway Road would be signage. And if it happened to be paved, would be to include some additional traffic calming measures as part of the paving project.
Okay, so that was the lesser dollar amount then, was only because you were only really doing something up to where the bank is.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think Brian, you were next.
All right. Sure, thank you. I didn't even raise my hand.
Well, you started to get up.
I did start, yes, I did. I think what we're hearing this evening is the dilemma here. And the dilemma in part is, what's the purpose? Is it connectivity versus recreation versus access?
Or both.
And Lonnie, I think, spoke to that very well regarding the commercial district. a couple other comments. First of all, the best calming device, I believe, is actually potholes. So, and we're doing a great job this year.
Free.
And they're free. And that is not meant to be at all a criticism of the traffic, the highway crew, who really have done a great job despite the difficulty with the weather. But even as a citizen, I have to bring out the idea that there are absolutely, with this town, unlimited needs, but limited resources. And I'm trying to, in my own mind, prioritize what a sidewalk, path, access, multimodal, whatever we call it, against some of the other priorities that is in the town plan, like water and wastewater. I'm not sure how we're going to rank this project in terms of the ability for the townspeople to make their tax payments going forward with the other needs that are absolutely pressing. And again, I'm glad I'm not a select board member. And last thing is, I now understand why Peter Mitchell at I think the meeting a couple of weeks ago said something like, the sidewalk path in Riverside has been a 30-year project. It just takes time, and priorities change, ability to pay, financing changes. I don't have answers, but I appreciate the difficulty that you folks are dealing with some of these issues, and because it's just not clear cut. Last comment. My concern, Sean, is that we're putting more people on Raceway without doing other improvements. And one of the improvements that I think need to be made, whether we put a sidewalk in or redirect or whatever, is there's this blind spot that's next to Chamberlain's property and Belomo's property, between the Chamberlain property and Dean's property further down on Raceway, where there's an absolute hump and blind spot.
That was the first thing I thought of when I saw option 3 as
by putting more
I used to
people
walk on
on
that
the
spot.
road, it's dangerous. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Matt Champlin.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm not necessarily going to comment about the paths of the sidewalk. What I want to comment about is the notion of putting Jersey barriers in Raceway Road to stop through traffic. You will also stop the fire trucks coming out of the Underhill station, which are the closest to foothills in our emergency response. By doing that, depending upon where you put them, you could potentially add over 1.5 miles of travel for us to get to any emergency in the foothills. So, I would not be in favor of putting Jersey barriers in Raceway Road to stop through traffic, just from that perspective. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you. Are there any other people who wish to comment tonight?
Dean Davis, I'd just like to make one statement. I've lived on Raceway Road 60 years, and I consider it a fairly safe road. And I walk across it all the time, walk up and down it, drive my tractor 15 miles an hour up the road with a hay bund that's 11 feet wide, and everybody gives me room to go by. Nobody's ever hit me. So, and Raceway Road is called Raceway Road because it used to race horses down the road. way
Oh,
back when.
interesting.
It wasn't a path between two farms, it was a road. You know, that road's been there a long, long, long.
So it was racing horses, huh?
Racing horses from the far end down to where the church is.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
So then, that would give them about a good quarter-mile race on Sunday. See you at the fastest horse.
No, I'm just used to Detroit dragways on Sunday, be there.
Yeah, but and, you know, and I feel that Raceway, there's probably 2% of people that really do the speeding. but they get everybody's attention.
They do.
And people always give, for me at least, give room to go by, and I don't have a problem.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
SJ has a hand up.
All right, SJ. I just think.
Hi, everybody.
About the Raceway horses.
Me too.
I just wanted to, I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know the owners of the various parcels. And so I assume we're talking about the same spot, but it's the hill by the dentist where I won't walk or ride my bike on that part of Raceway because the blind spot is so prominent there. And I definitely wouldn't let my kids go that way. And so that said, though, if there is some kind of signage or putting up a mirror or something that will be a part of this path, should that alternative be chosen, that would be very welcome. But that is a really dangerous spot.
Yep.
Thank you, SJ. Any other comments before we close this off? Want to make sure everybody did have their chance to talk, even though I wasn't as good as watching the clock as I could have been. Oh, wow. Nobody? Okay, nobody up there?
Let's not beg.
Well, we appreciate all the comments and the answers that you were able to provide.
And the presentation and everything.
Because we knew that this would take a long time.
Yeah. So do we comment now? Probably should, right?
Right, this is when you get to comment.
Okay. So I sympathize with a lot of the comments that I've heard tonight. I personally, I know right now that I'm not ready to make a motion of approval tonight.
Well, since there's only two of us that.
Yeah, but even if it were three, I mean, not that you wouldn't necessarily need me, you'd still have two, but I personally am not ready to pick one. I appreciate all the options. I do think that I asked at the last one for what Lonnie suggested is just, and I know that it was part of a previous study that I wasn't on the board for, but the north side of 15, I really wanted to see that as, I understand that you probably know why there's reasons why that one won't work, but I'm not familiar with those. So I would really love to see that as an option 4, if that doesn't cost us $2 million to get studied, whatever that is. I would love to see how that compares to the other one.
So let's have an answer now.
I can answer that now. So the reason that the north side option was not chosen and was left out was because of the number of commercial access driveways that the path would have to cross.
Yeah,
And
I remember that.
The conflicts between the drivers coming in and out of those driveways and the users of the path. That was the main reason.
Okay, so again, I don't do these studies for a living, so I don't mean to question that. Those concerns seem less than the concerns of some of the concerns I heard brought up tonight. To me, like, and when I think about walking on a sidewalk, and I know I've got to cross Jerry Hill, and that's a giant entryway. I don't know how we get that, a curb cut that's like a quarter mile long. So I get it. I get it. That part's a little weird, right? But like, I don't know, with some decent striping, and when we think about like the issues over by that we hear about in the summertime of Palmer's Maple and like just all of that, like having a sidewalk that crosses an entryway to a commercial thing doesn't feel to me as problematic as the impacts of some of the homeowners along the south, as directing people down Raceway, or as going through a field. It just doesn't feel as impactful as the other three to me. I wasn't trying to impress the audience. I thought you guys would be mad at me.
No.
I will say that, if an option like that were pursued, a recommendation that would likely be included would be to address access management. Consolidating drives, possibly even, making a, some sort of frontage road or frontage drive so that you can, have less curb cuts on Vermont 15 to access the same number of commercial properties. And that could be something that the town pursues separate from this project. It would certainly add quite a lot to the cost of building a path, compared to these other paths. But that's also something for the town to consider in general is, access management policies. It could be a real opportunity, and those are things that can be done in a retrofit fashion, as well as when new development comes online, as part of the requirements, and there's, different towns have different access management regulations or guidelines, and then that's something that, a consulting firm could assist with, but that's basically what it comes down to. So it's not, and it's not just the number of drives plus the shared use path. It's also that it's during, that is within the high speed segment of Vermont 15, the 50 mile per hour speed zone. When in combination, if it's in a lower speed area, then the impact of that number of driveways with the shared use path through it would be less than it is in a high speed area. And so it's, and like has been mentioned, what comes out of this study does not preclude the town from pursuing other facilities in the future. But choosing an option that does come out of what, has been done with this study would give the town a new resource sooner than later, that can be added to in the future.
Would you allow me to comment to that, to your point, Eric?
You have to ask the chair.
That's the one drawback that even though I promoted the north side, I think that's the best spot that, the one thing that north side lends is that you can have the full 10-foot wide, I believe, shared bike path on that north side. There's room for it all the way down through there. That's the good thing. The drawback is that one curb cut for Mountain High, Ace Hardware, etc. An option is that I thought of was that coming up 15, have people go down North Main Street, which the town is trying to connect over to Kate's food truck from the back. And they could come in, travel North Main Street around behind Ace Hardware. And
I just want to clarify for the record, I don't know of a plan for the town to make that connection. I'm not saying personally, I wouldn't like to see it. I'm just saying the town is, we get in trouble when we say that there's a plan when there isn't one.
Put words in your mouth.
Thank you.
Now, that would be considered access management, wouldn't it, if you went through the back way?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm forgetting, is North Main Street, this side of?
Same side as Ace Hardware, mini store, side street.
Yeah, but is the entry of it this side of?
That would be safer than only having, or than having the access on the main highway.
Great, that's a good point. Thank you. Did you hear that?
No.
Question was, in terms of access management, if access to a parcel or a business is made off of a side street, would that be better access management? And the answer is yes, because you're reducing the number of curb cuts on the main highway, and you're making use of, a side street and then, access off of there. So anytime you can reduce the number of curb cuts on the main line, consolidating them or putting them on a side street, where there's already an existing intersection with stop control, that would be an improvement in terms of access management.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. It's not that I don't I don't mean to dismiss those ideas. They just seem a little more far-fetched to think of adding side streets in, compared to like when I walk on a sidewalk in Burlington, they cross lots of businesses, and yeah, it can be hairy, I guess, but
And the speed zone is not 55 miles an
yeah,
hour.
that's true. That's true. But you're not going 50 as you're hopefully fishtailing it into Ace Hardware. I mean, sometimes I am running in there like at the last minute before they close, but
I've done it going 49.
yeah. Okay, that was my thing. I know you mentioned the same thing last time, but I would just love to see like the price and the impact, and I get you. It sounds like your recommendation, it would be number 4 on your recommendation, but
Well, we have to look at the cost. I mean.
yeah, I'd like to see the cost
because
and
my
the,
point, because Brian has an excellent point. I mean, because we've got this wastewater study coming up. People want water. I mean, where
does it fit? Yeah.
Where do you fit?
True.
Because we're asking for a bond for the maintenance facility because it's desperately needed now.
Right.
And then all these other things are all part of the package too. And, and then unfortunately Edie had to leave to talk about the school taxes, but Linda?
In the previous version of the scoping study, the first one that was done, all of the comparisons between the north side sidewalk and the south side sidewalk are there. So I'll send you a link. I'll email it to you if you want to.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Look at that study and see the reasons, both why it wasn't chosen and how it compares.
Maybe we could.
Can we
post
still
that.
pick it?
Maybe we could
It's
post that.
online.
Oh,
Yeah,
it is
it's on the
okay. It's
website.
already available.
Yeah, it's not intuitive to find on our website, so I will send you a link.
That'd be
Well,
great.
if you
Thank
ever
you.
have the appendices, it is included in the appendices of this report.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Stacy's iPhone. She has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. Sean,
know,
one
no.
last question.
She has one last question, she said.
I'm here, Stacy.
Yes, thank you, Sean. Is there resources we can look at for, you just were talking about different ease of access and curb cuts, where we can look at that to have some opportunities for maybe different ways to go about this?
I can share some access management resources with the town.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
And this whole project is on the town website. So you could
Yes,
look.
but yes, and that's great, but I just heard Sean having some information that may be thinking outside of the box and Lonnie brought up a lot of good questions, but that would be some opportunities for us to capitalize on that. Thank you,
Thank you.
Sean.
Well, thank you. All right, I think given where we are, we're not going to make a decision tonight. Because, I mean, even if we could both, because we could agree to say we're not doing it tonight, which is what we're doing. And even if I said, well, I'm looking at the cost. And option 3 is the least expensive for connectivity, but there are a lot of issues with it that have to be added, so.
Again, I can't vote on this, but I do have a question and maybe some history. And something like this, does it ever go to town to be voted on? Let's say it moves forward and so on. Is this a town voting issue or not?
It had never, to my knowledge, it never has been.
But as we move forward with the new format and so on, an Australian ballot, would it become one?
I have to look that up in terms of the because typically the road.
See, I don't know what constitutes a town.
Because the select board is the only one that has responsibility for roads and pathways.
Correct, yep.
So that's where it
Okay.
is.
Yep, what I was thinking, Joe, is the way to look at it is the select board has the statutory authority to make the decision regarding alternative. The part that townspeople would vote on would be the funding.
Okay, so that's where I guess I'm going.
That's just.
If it wasn't grant funding for the whole thing,
My intuition.
we were looking to move forward on this with a $4 million bond.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, so.
That's right.
So that would be the aspect
Right.
that would be approved by the town. Okay.
Just
I
like
understand
it's
that.
gonna be the same way with any of these other major projects we're
Yep.
looking at.
Okay, thanks.
And I just want to point out to anyone else listening, me personally not wanting to make a decision tonight isn't because I don't support some sort of connecting path. I absolutely do. I just, it's like trying to pick which one, is the best is tough.
And I think we do have an issue about priorities, in terms of all the other, because we probably, we might make an alternative choice, down the road. But it doesn't mean we may go forward with funding of it because we find out.
True,
X
but
other
but I
project-
do
X
think,
project
but
is
I do
gonna
think
cost
if
3
it
times as
were,
much.
but I do want to just delineate that I do think if hypothetically we were ready to make a decision on which of the three we like best, we could make a decision right now.
Exactly,
And nothing with much is going to happen for at least 6 years. Like right? Like
exactly.
the sidewalk between where this would end and Underhill, I was sure was going to start 2 years ago and it still hasn't started. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a while before anything. I'm just saying with the priorities, you could pick an option
Right.
and slow down your fund, like there's all sorts of ways to.
That's a pragmatic point of view, though. That's the process,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, because you could just do up to, the Packard Road,
Right.
sidewalks to there.
True.
Because that way Packard Road could walk down to the
That's
school.
true. If all three options have that, that's an interesting
Yeah,
concept.
I mean, that's something that can be done because you do it in phases and this is your cost. Because that lets people who might, walk down Packard Road, get on the sidewalk and walk down to the, the corners.
Susan.
We can't shut up.
Can you just clarify what you will do next, if anything? Like, do you expect to put this on a future agenda where the north side option would be resurfaced and you would decide whether or not to study that? Are you gonna come back to it in a month? If you are saying you're not ready to make a decision now because you need more information, what is the more information that you need? If you know at all, so that for people who are tracking the project, especially when people say that it's hard to pay attention and keep notified of everything that's going on, when would we look for when you might make a decision or what more information you will analyze to make a decision? So that as you close this topic, we understand how it's been closed.
That's a great and fair question that I don't know the answer to. Like, I might have all the information that I need. I feel a lot of pressure to pick one of these 2 million, some plus or minus projects right now. It's a perfectly fair question that I think we owe it to the town to give an answer of when we might make a decision on it. And I'll commit to doing that personally, but I don't want to tell you right now it'll be at the next select board meeting or even in March. You know what I mean? I think it's fair to come back within the next month or two with some sort of revisit of it. Is that
And
fair?
unless you're going to add more information back and say you want to revisit all of the first go round, it will be just the select board decision.
Right. No, fair enough.
I will mention, I don't know how much time you spent with the report. But there is a lot of information in the report, that
was a lot of reading.
goes deeper than what I was able to cover during the presentation.
Sure. And it's true. I didn't have a chance to digest it fully. I did read through it, but not to really, I'd want to read through it and then go drive on Raceway again. It's been 5 years since I lived on Raceway, so I haven't been up
Not
there,
just the report, but the appendices.
Oh, that's where you really get the dirt.
And the appendices
So to
are
speak.
the roll plans, which are large, large plans that show, zoomed in what the impacts are for, all along these parcels. It also provides the, other information that's kept out of the body of the report, supplemental information, previous studies and whatnot. So I'll mention that. I'll also mention that the next round for funding that, you know, what this would be eligible for, I believe is in June.
Right, the big sidewalk, so.
Yep, yep.
Money.
And that,
That's-
you know, so
that's
it's
good to know.
June and then, you know, towards the end of the year. So we missed that most recent one. Next one is in June. But, you know, depending on the decision, you know, the recommended alternative would have less things holding it up than, say, the other options in terms of, you know, going through the wetlands process or, you know, the amount of right of way that it would go through. And of course, you know, town could decide to just put that sidewalk in place, and not even touch Raceway Road for right now.
Exactly.
If that's what you decided to do. You know, and you still get a new sidewalk and it doesn't preclude the town from pursuing other options in the future.
That's true. And just for the record, in case I sound lazy by not having digested this, I think we only got it on Tuesday, right? So like, I'm gonna read it.
It's a lot. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
I mean, you don't read it as soon as you get it?
I mean,
You have been very helpful in terms of answering.
I think we need to call it.
Yeah,
I think we need to call it for
appreciate
tonight.
that.
We've kept him here long enough.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting report.
Thank you, Stacy. Unfortunately, public comment is come to an end. Feel free to forward any additional comments to me and I can in turn get them to the select board.
I'm in.
And thank everyone for coming out
Might have
and
just left her hand
what
up.
looks like to be snowing right now. Evening.
Yeah, every now and then I see a light and I see some snowflakes highlighted by it.
And I'm sorry, we should send a letter of apology to Edye.
Yep.
I mean, that's.
No.
No?
I'm sorry. He asked a question that I was answering. I wasn't listening to you. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say,
He just asked if we were adjourned. I said no.
no, we're not adjourned.
So
We're just done with that.
We're done with this item, but we unfortunately, because this Edye, we had asked her here tonight, and she had just come from the Deborah Rawson legislative updates at the Deborah Rawson. And we had asked her here tonight because we thought it would give a different platform to what was going on with the schools and how it would impact the town and the town budget as well as the bond vote, because everybody's very nervous about what the numbers are for the school and how it's going to be impacting everything else. And it turns out that Front Porch Forum today talked about now that the schools are going to go back and postpone it till April. So it really, you know, it would have been nice to talk to her, but we will send her an apology. It turned out to be a much longer meeting. We thought it would be long, but on the other hand, we weren't sure how long it would be. Did you have your hand up for a question?
Nope.
No, he just raised his hand, did? Yeah. Oh, you were just getting ready to go.
Yeah, we're getting ready to go. We thought you had ended the meeting.
Oh, no, we just ended that, just that topic.
You can stay and listen to our other.
Well, I know, but Stowe's calling me back. Frankly, once or twice and said, hey, you haven't billed me in a while. But there's more.
There's more.
Thank you. You have a good evening.
Good evening, all.
Just concisely, I was just gonna have a question. It's okay. So to your question, I'm just trying to understand, like, it sounds like you're basically taking a little bit of a pause, you're reviewing the new information in the report and you're gonna communicate when there might be a decision point or next step at some point in the next month or two, I think you mentioned.
Right,
Which is
because
fine. I just was trying to understand. The next
yeah, if
step.
we want to take advantage of applying for a sidewalk grant to see what could happen between here and from, you know, Griswold to essentially Packard.
Yeah.
We would need to make a decision within those two months so that we could you know, put it into the hopper with everybody else in June. When we make the decision, it will be an agenda item because we cannot do it all has to be in the public and voted on in front of the public. All right, We're going to review and consider reappointment of representatives to the CCCUD board.
So, for people who aren't aware, the current representatives to the Chittenden County Communication Union District, which is the allied bargaining unit of towns within Chittenden County that are working with CCRPC and a consultancy out of the state of Maine to forward initiatives to get underserved and unserved people in our community and the member communities broadband access via fiber. The current representative from the town of Jericho by default is me. My alternate has been Angeliki Kontis, who is the executive director of Mount Mansfield Community Television. And as required by the founding statutes of the Champlain, the CCCUD, where participating municipalities are required to make reappointments of their representatives annually. So the ask is for a motion to reappoint me as representative and Angeliki as alternate.
I'll make a motion to approve reappointment of the current representatives to the CCCUD board.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, next on the agenda is the certificate of no appeal or suit pending, which is an annual thing by the listers.
Yep.
And it's just strictly you approve. There's
Can I
no
ask
court cases out about it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do we have any appeals or suits pending?
No.
Okay. Make a motion to approve the certificate of no appeal or suits pending.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I have the signature page for signature. And Joe
I
and
never have
Catherine,
a
so you
pen.
know, I also have the resolution.
I signed it.
You did, but these guys have.
Oh, they didn't. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that was another long day. Oops. You signed under the listers. This is the select board.
Oh, it's had a little arrow.
I know.
Okay.
Don't follow directions.
Sorry. Yeah, it's not. quick.
Selectman or mayor. Cool.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you. Can
And
we
then
move on
you
to select board
get this one.
updates?
Yeah. Yes.
All righty, put this down in some sheet of paper here, got too many sheets of paper. Here it is. Okay, next is updates, including Eclipse planning. Yay.
I did have a thought on that, but go ahead with your update first.
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
So, It's really not much of an update since our last meeting. We're waiting to get glasses.
Oh,
Okay, so I was wondering how that order thing went.
That's pretty much it.
Did you settle how many you ordered?
1,000 in the town right now, like the library's got them.
We got our order numbers worked out. We indeed will not have a pair for everyone in town. but
you
close.
won't? Oh, no.
We got a box over their doorstep. My wife ordered them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, you're kidding me.
How many did you get?
I think 10.
Yeah, they come in a pack.
Yeah.
At any rate, I Yeah, I don't see there being a need for any significant amount of planning or preparation on our part.
I have a proposal. It's ridiculous, but I still think we should do it as an official thing of the town. I think we should invite the musician Bonnie Tyler, who sings one of the best songs ever written, Total Eclipse of the Heart, to the town of Jericho
Right.
on April 8th. I don't know how we can
wanna make a motion?
I mean, we
Someone
can't
reach
because
out?
we can't because it's not on the agenda, but I think we could get it included on the agenda and somehow make an official.
Bill Vermont makes, see if they makes it again.
I can reach out to her, Eric.
All right.
See if she's available
Yeah.
for our first meeting.
I don't know if she still performs. She
We have a
doesn't have,
Graning
we don't,
award
we,
winner in town.
make sure she knows we're not expecting a performance, but just her presence would be welcome.
Well, I mean, if she was here to sing on the 8th, I mean, that of April, then, but of course, I don't think we could afford her, but you know, you never know.
It's just an invite. I'm not looking for her to perform, just to,
The fact
Come
that you
visit
know
our
her
town.
name
Is she alive? You sure she's alive?
I'm not positive, but I would have known had something happened.
Peter, that's kind of morbid.
Old song.
It is an awesome.
It is a very old song.
We're old.
The other two, I'm gonna keep it brief.
Hey, John, Matt Champlin here.
Oh, hi, Matt.
Yeah, just on Eclipse planning. So the town's not really planning on doing much in regards to that.
Well,
Yeah.
in terms of special events, I don't really
Okay.
lead our thinking if there's something that we're overlooking in terms of planning. It's what I've heard in these meetings I've been on is there's obviously extraordinary number of people making reservations to stay in hotels and places statewide, but to the degree that we have no motels here, one bed and breakfast, not really sure what to expect in terms of traffic or that sort of thing. We did talk about people trying to access the western flank of Mount
Right.
Mansfield. And you know, again, I don't know if the state parks are planning to do anything concerted to reach out around issues of traffic control. I think the biggest concern that's been discussed is people who don't live here trying to get up Mount Mansfield when it's supposed to be off limits based on Green Mountain Club requirements. And during mud season where people could easily get stuck on any of the approaching roads up to Underhill State Park or from both entrances to the state park.
I think both libraries may be toying with the idea of doing something locally in the
Right.
library, but that's about it.
Matt, do you have any statewide intel that would benefit us in knowing?
I heard today that the state is considering opening all state parks.
They're considering opening them. Wow.
Yes.
Oh, I bet.
Um, Well, just for the event.
Memorial Day.
I know, that's right.
So it's open and.
And I'm guessing there'll be no management or oversight. They may put, I guess what I would expect is the Green Mountain Club will put summit caretakers at the summits and I don't know, maybe trailheads to talk about use or responsible use.
Yeah, I think the concern that I have in Jericho is anything, you know, people are going to be looking for any place to go to be able to see this, right? So I would completely expect Mills Riverside Park to potentially be overwhelmed. Cars parking on Route 15. You know, the new area there, the conserved area right next to Mills Riverside Park off of Balch Drive. You know, from a fire department perspective, I don't, you know, if people plug roads, I don't know what authority, we don't have authority to do anything with that. And if there's an emergency and we can't get there, we'll obviously always try to do our best, but it is concerning from our perspective, from that aspect. I also understand there's not much the town's going to do. If 350, 400 cars want to park on the side of Route 15 in that area for a few hours, right?
Yeah.
So I get it, or Brown's Trace, or I have not had an opportunity to check with the schools to see what they plan on doing and with parking lots and things like that. I know that we are going to block off our parking lot at both fire stations to make sure that we can still have access to them. And they don't get filled up. So those are the I have a big concern with Mount Mansfield, and potentially the number of rescues that are going to be called for up there. We may have some very bad situations develop. We had a year and a half ago, we had 13 rescues in one day on Mount Mansfield, which completely stressed any and all resources that we had. We had multiple fire agencies, multiple rescue agencies, mountain rescue teams, all of that stuff. And if this is going to be happening all over, Camel's Hump, any place that's high is going to have an inundation of people. So I'm sort of setting the expectation that, we've got a limited resource here. I can't call Cambridge. I'm guessing they're going to probably be dealing with the same thing down in their side of town. Stowe Mountain Rescue is going to probably be dealing with it there. Waterbury Backcountry is going to be dealing with Camel's Hump. And we're not hearing about a lot of resources. So we're going to work on some staffing for the day. But we are primarily a volunteer agency. So I'm sort of just setting the expectation from the fire department side that, our ability to handle this level of potential call volume, it's going to be tough.
Peter?
Matt, I'm wondering, this is Peter Booth. I'm wondering if maybe some of all the agencies you just listed were to contact the Green Mountain Club and request or suggest that they broadcast and announce that the trails are all closed and there's no access to those mountains. They also don't want 100 people up those trails in April destroying the trails. So they might be open to that idea.
Peter, I think you're talking thousands of people. And I don't think that these people are going to drive up on April 7th and they're going to drive to the mountain and they're not going to be local. They're not going to hear any of those announcements. They're not going to do anything of that. And that's the concern that we have, is that these are going to be people that are completely and absolutely unprepared for the conditions. It might be 50 and sunny at the bottom of the mountain and a clear sheet of ice at the top, and they're just not going to be prepared.
That's true. Well, that's scary, man.
I was thinking it would be a benefit if we got a significant amount of snow. It might be a discouragement, but maybe not. Could just add to the problem.
A good 3-day rainstorm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's certainly more likely.
Right.
So
my daughter and son-in-law are actually driving San Antonio to see it, and they live in Burlington.
Yeah. Okay. So that was part of the reason why I was here tonight was to hear. So the town's not planning any big event or anything like that we need to be concerned about.
If Bonnie Tyler comes, then
okay. We'll come down to your farm, Eric.
Yeah.
The answer is no. I'm not sure if there's anything official that the library is hosting. I remember they did something during the last solar eclipse. But.
Okay. So John, just I'll stay in touch with you, and if you guys, if the town hears stuff, just let me know. And
I will. I started. There's a group that's having weekly Zoom meetings. I didn't catch the last one, which is potentially where they announced the opening of the trails, but I'll reach out to the person who convenes them and try to get you updated info.
Yeah, and maybe Underhill State Park would not be open just because of the conditions that we would likely know to be there at that time, right? They might have been talking about some other parts like Grand Isle State Park, which would likely be in much better condition
Oh, I
being
see.
on the lake and those sorts of things, right? So
Okay.
again, I've attended some of those meetings when and where I can. They're happening during my workday, so it's very hard for me to do that. We are. So the other piece is we are thinking about it as an organization. We are looking at what we can do. One of the big concerns is that there's just not enough ambulances. I mean,
Oh, that's true. Never thought about
we
that.
don't. There are days we don't have enough ambulances as it is, without an extra 100,000 people up here. So, again, we'll do our best. So,
Thanks,
thank
Matt.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you,
for
Matt.
3.5 minutes. Amazing.
Yeah, because that's what Jericho gets us, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. But, you know, then you get that's a totality, but you have the, you know, part that grows in and the part that goes away. I mean, you know, if you want
I
to.
think the song length is even longer than that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty long song.
She wouldn't even have to, she wouldn't even have to repeat it there. Maybe one refrain.
Oh. All right, next.
My wife thought it was stupid too, but I did it anyway. 4 minutes and 27 seconds. is
Well,
the
you're
song
right.
length.
That's longer than they.
Yeah.
I just wanted to provide follow-up on the grant that we are partnering in with the Leahy Institute for Rural Community Development. The formal proposal, so we went through the process of submitting the letter of interest. We proposed 2 projects. One was an inventory of our current housing stock, ADUs, etc. The other was to look at gaining support for education and outreach related to development and implementation of community wastewater within the village centers. What they identified through the process of evaluating those letters is there's another project that was proposed by Windham County Regional Planning that intends to take inventory of all the current community wastewater facilities in the state and through GIS work identify other potential locations. And what they saw in connecting us to that larger initiative was the opportunity for Jericho to be a case study in a municipality that has identified significant need, has undertaken the process of going through a feasibility study, and will be positioned to seek funding and engineering and implementation. So what they are proposing is to provide us with a UVM intern who would help develop hopefully an exportable toolkit. So once we develop a strategy for community engagement and education, given the requirements and hopes for our facility, we'll be able to reproduce that. So the proposal was, Linda and I worked on a letter of support. I submitted that today, and we will hear back as to whether that proposal will proceed. Okay. And then I just want to talk briefly about the town maintenance facility. We had our second open town garage last Saturday. Relatively light in terms of turnout. We did have the benefit of having a former highway department member, Cubby Blades, join us, which was, God, I wish I had met Cubby before we made our video.
Oh, he's a hoot.
Because
Yes, he is. First time ever I talked to him, but I figured that one out quick.
he full-throatedly said this place is a disaster, they should tear it down.
Don't tear it down, I want to tear it down.
Right, and then he was reminded that cold storage is still a possibility. Anyway, yeah, that concludes the final open garage public engagement, piece of our strategy to move the town maintenance facility toward a successful bond vote.
That's terrific. Do you have any updates?
I don't think that I do.
Okay, I just have a couple. One of them actually kind of goes along with what we were talking about forever tonight. Is the Jericho Energy Task Force is having a movie on February 29th at 7 p.m. at the Deborah Rawson Memorial Library. And it's called Bikes versus Cars. And it's a award-winning movie at Blood of the Green Festivals. And it highlights the conflict in city planning between bikes, cars, and the growing reliance on fossil fuels. And then Local Motion's Executive Director, Christina Erickson, will be on hand for a post-movie discussion. And then I also attended a Chittenden County Energy Roundtable on the 12th via Zoom. And although some of us have included climate in our initial mission statements or whatever, the names don't reflect that. So there's a current push to change energy committee names being put out by the Regional Planning Commission to formally include the word climate in with it. And moving and to move from the primary focus of efficiencies to include GHG emissions with greenhouse gases. And the problem is, you know, how measurability and data points for the local communities. And, you know, and they expect that, you know, with targeting GHG emissions, you know, there could be funding availability. There's also, you know, it aligns with the actions now with state goals. And then they discussed a couple towns actually have municipal climate action plans. And some of them are quite good. And there are now heat pumps that are air to water, and there's 100 within the state, but they're much more expensive. But it hits those who have, like we have, hot water heat. You know, baseboard hot water with.
I mean, I have one. I mean, my hot water does that. I got a new hot water heater that's a heat pump. It takes air, it takes whatever, it takes heat out of the air in the basement and puts it into the water. Is that what you mean? Or you mean that's more like the furnace that actually
Furnace. It's instead of, you know, you know, your heat pump that, you know, that it's electrified. This actually, you know, uses air and it heats the water that heats your house.
Interesting.
So Eric, on yours, does it bring the water to temp or does it bring it from well water down or raise it up?
No, it heats the water. So it's hybrid. So it still has the electric elements, but you can change the settings on it. So you can have it just on heat pump. Probably take you all day to like fully recover if you were to drain it. But if you were like on light use, you could just run it on heat pump. And so it blows out cool air, cool, dry air. So I kind of got it as a way to have free dehumidification in my basement, which needs it. So
that is clever.
My dehumidifier works the opposite, takes the moisture out and adds heat to my basement.
absolutely right, because if you run a regular dehumidifier, it just heats up your basement.
Yeah, and then we also talked about EV charging stations, but that's all I have for updates.
Only thing I had was the town garage again, John, well done. I did have a great conversation with Bob McGee regarding the status of the equipment. We're looking at troubles with the loader, trouble with the trucks, what they're looking at and so on. So it was good. It was informative, you know, you bent my ear for probably a good 45 minutes to an hour, but it was very useful. So.
Oh.
Cool.
You'd think with all the equipment that we've been dealing with that we wouldn't have issues. Yeah. Oh, well.
Always issues.
Always issues. Okay. Equipment issue. Write that down. All right, next on the agenda is, we approve the warrants of 1/26/24. We approve the minutes of 2/1/24.
I didn't have a chance. I skimmed the, excuse me. I skimmed the minutes. I did not have a chance to fully. I did.
I thought they were actually quite good. They're
They were short.
yep. The primary error correction is on line 94. And it says due to the 3-acre wastewater rule, that should be 3-acre stormwater. But otherwise, the minutes were fine.
I think I got these all. They're bundled together a little oddly, so. Motion to approve the minutes of February 1st, 24.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. And now I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session for reasons of personnel and legal because premature disclosure of the information will be detrimental to the parties involved. And I would like to invite to that executive session, Susan Brzee, John Abbott.
I'll second
Is that it?
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night all.
Thank you.